Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Jen.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to Season 3 of What Are You Listening To? The weekly podcast created to foster community through music by sharing the stories behind the songs that soundtrack our lives. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Stephen Morgan. Stephen is a comedian, improviser, musician, and writer. He's joining us today from his home in the Netherlands, where he's a cast member, performer, and teacher with Amsterdam's Easy Laughs. He's a regular on the English language scene around mainland Europe, and he hosts the popular comedy night LYFAO. He's also the host of Real Power Talk, a comedy interview series launched in conjunction with the media company All Things Loud. This week, Stephen and I are going to get to know each other through 4 songs. 2 are his picks and 2 are mine. For the best listening experience, I recommend tuning into the show on Spotify. There, you can hear the show with the songs we discuss incorporated. You can also find the show on Apple, Amazon Music, or wherever you stream. But if you're not listening on Spotify, be sure to give the playlist a listen and then tune into our conversation. With that, let's get started. Stephen, what are you listening to this week?
Well, I'm glad you asked, Jen. The first song I've been listening to this week is from a Welsh band called The Bug Club, and the song is called It's Art.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to dig in about this song, Stephen. I love this song. I had no idea. I always call it out when a guest brings a band or a song that's new to me to the show. And this was not a band I was familiar with, and I loved it. And I think that as we go through the playlist, I think the listeners will discover how your picks sort of influenced my picks in terms of what I was listening to. That happens a lot. Sometimes I'll get guest songs and then I'm like, oh, what does this sound like? Or what does this remind me of? So more to be revealed there. But let's talk about the Bug Club. How did you find this band? Tell me about the song, why you chose it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny one to me as well. It was a recent discovery. So I'm a Welsh guy living here in the Netherlands, and one of my local venues is just one of those venues which has such a good booker that you just kind of go there and know that they're going to be some great bands playing. You know, it's just like, it's just got that level of quality. Yeah, exactly. I'm just kind of like, if you got no plans, yeah, let's see what's going on there. And this was one of those bands where literally I never heard of them before. And then my interest was piqued because I'm from Wales, and there's some really good Welsh music, but not so much that escapes from the UK. And I heard this and it just ticked all of my boxes, this kind of anti-folk style, the lyrics just with that kind of acerbic sort of cutting but satirical slant to them. I mean, a song called It's Art, you just know it's just like a send up of the whole kind of the art scene and the kind of ridiculousn's of some of it and some of the people in it. And that delivered with such a simple song and such a sort of deadpan, style, where and inexplicably throwing in sort of like a sort of really 80s guitar riff right in the middle, and that just stands out like a mile. It's just one of those ones where I listened once, and then since then I've listened must be like 10, 15 times.
It's so good. And I think too, it also seemed to touch on a little bit about the sort of the ridiculousness of trying to pinpoint and label and put in a box different kinds of art, right? That was kind of a takeaway for me too, that's kind of like an effort in futility, right? Art is art.
Yeah, exactly. And I can completely, because I know the place that they're from as well, which added another level to me. Is there's no scene there. There's not going to be a place where it's there's not, they haven't got that local venue like I have here in Utrecht. They're just going to have some pub where people start fights. So I can imagine these real outsider people just making music and just being like, damn, we're just making things that are good, that we like. That's how it works. And it just resonates with me strongly. I love the song.
I did too. And I love that you kind of get the feeling of, I had read that they were a Welsh band. And so I was kind of I love too that you could almost feel that in the music a little bit,
Yeah.
I love that when you get kind of a hometown flair. I know what you mean by that. It kind of seeps into the music. My husband's from Ireland. And so oftentimes when we hear bands, Irish bands, we're like, oh, especially ones that come from Limerick, where he's from. we're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that sounds like, they're straight out of Castle Troy or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, and it's a subtle thing as well, because sometimes you can get artists who, there's some English artists, for example, who do that whole kind of London accent thing, and it almost sounds like a cliche of the different stereotypes of a nation. But with this, it's
Right.
like there's a sort of slight Welshness to it, but at the same time, you're just like, they're just doing their thing,
Yeah,
It just
totally.
comes out.
And it feels authentic. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Yeah.
feel like they're trying too hard in the slightest. And sometimes that's where I have
Yeah.
problems a lot of times, or where I don't love like a Jack Stauber or somebody, or
Yeah.
then I go like all the way back to like the 80s to a band like the Tom Tom Club or something like that, where I'm like, it didn't resonate because it felt forced. And this felt so natural to me. And so
That's a
just like
really
on the level.
yeah. That's a really good point, actually. And I also think that that's kind of just a general cultural shift, not just in music, of the fact that we're in general more willing to accept things that don't sort of spell out what it's about, where it's not just super in your face of like, yeah, this is the thing we do. We're just much
Yeah.
more open as time goes on to kind of like go, okay, they're alluding to some things. I guess they don't even understand it themselves, but they're just making it happen. And then we just like work it out together.
Well, and I think with something like this, it would be really easy to fall into parody, and they never do.
Right.
It never
Yeah.
feels like a parody. But
Oh, yeah.
I am interested, while we're talking about parody, I want to talk a little bit more about real power talk, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So tell me about how that came into being. Like, I know that there's a couple of like fake bands or spoof bands that you guys call to the Pups come to mind, the Canadian band.
No, so yeah, the bands themselves are actually 100% real. So
Are
they
they?
are, yeah. So it's the company I do it through. It's a company I've done some writing for before. So they often interview, photograph, and just like bands coming through the Netherlands, like this, the whole kind of like press junket. There'll be just like the standard interviews you have. Tell me about the latest album, influences, etc., depending on the artist. And there was just kind of like this feeling, because I'd done a lot of those interviews too, that it's just a little bit deflating for everyone involved, because they've answered these questions 100 times. The songs they wrote on this new album are now probably like 2 or 3 years old already by the time they've had to record them and start touring them and everything. And so it just always had this feeling of like, okay, it's a pleasant conversation, but we're all going through like this autopilot. And so I had this idea of just like, let's, it actually started with a guy called Donny Benet, an Australian artist who sort of has a larger than life look to him. He's got this bald head. He wears like these 80s white suits with the t-shirt underneath. And he's got like this curly hair that just, like a crown around that remains there. And so I decided to do that interview dressed exactly like him with a fake wig thing on, but just do it in a way where I didn't acknowledge that I was looking different in any way. Just go in there and just be like, good to meet you. I'm a big fan, and continue that way. And it was really nice because it was just, it just completely like made the whole thing change and made the whole kind of like dynamic change. And it was just like such a fun, playful conversation. And we could just talk about some ridiculous things. We could talk about like other things that were not directly involved with like his latest album he's promoting. And then after that, I just sort of took it to the next level with Real Power Talk, and then created all these different characters who would interview these bands. And it would, as far as the bands were concerned, these were real people, but it's just always in character at that time. And then suddenly they're dealing with these larger than life characters, and you've got this combination of them answering questions sincerely, but also with the real kind of WTF response of like, is this real? What is actually going on?
Well, and I loved it because sometimes, like with I think back to like Sacha Baron Cohen and like Ali G and Barat and things like that. And I think like sometimes, as funny as it was, it felt mean spirited. And I liked that yours didn't at all. Yours just felt like, and now hearing you explain it, it was just a way to sort of like disarm people, right? And like, hey, we're going to have a different kind of conversation here. This isn't going to be the standard, like, tell me what this song means, I think that that's such a cool way to approach the work, right?
Yeah, and I'm really glad you picked up on that because that's really important to me as well. Because while I do know that those good people do some good things, it's really important to me to make it so that the character who I am is the butt of the joke. It's not
Yeah.
about trying to set someone up. It's not about trying to make them look like fools. It's just about the fact that it's like that the fun in it comes from just like, look at this utterly this 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 person who is falling apart in front of you, or has these terrible ideas that they think, or just has no idea what even a band is, or
Right.
anything about the music, or what music really is about. So those sorts of things
Yes.
just are so much more fun to me.
I loved it. I thought it was great. And I have to say, I really like the Nigel America character. That was a favorite of mine. So we'll listeners will tell you at the end of the show how you can tune in and check the show out. But it really is, I thought it was really great. And like I said, I was so happy to see that it was like really, it was friendly and it was engaging and it wasn't mean spirited at all. So I'm really, that makes me happy to hear that I was reading that right. Well,
Absolutely.
we had a little bit of mellowness there with Bug Club, and I think we're gonna like kind of turn it up to 11 for the rest of the episode here, Stephen. Right? So tell
Yeah.
me about your second pick.
All right, so this one is really resonating with me lately. This is the Lambrini Girls with "Boys in the Band," a song which they just released the music video for. I think it came out as a single like a week ago, but the song itself came out some time ago. For me, Lambrini Girls are kind of like they embody a lot of the raw elements of what punk was in the 70s, but
Yep.
with an incredibly strong feminist slant. And I wouldn't even call feminist, because the fact is that the music industry is so fundamentally misogynist and glorifies those sort of attributes, that to hear a band who outwardly call out some things which shouldn't even need calling out and should be so basic is just, it's a joy. I just love the music, and I love how unapologetic it is.
Me too. And I love just the power and the confidence they come with too. You know, like if
Yeah.
you're going to say the things they're going to say, as obvious as they are, you have to say them with conviction. You have to say them with confidence. And
Yeah.
they bring it 100 times. Like, I just love this song. And it was obviously a totally different vibe from your first pick. So I was like, yes, now we're like cranking it up. And I loved both songs, right? Even though they're
Right.
totally, it could not be more different songs. But I always like call out lyrics. And I, like you said, I love the female empowerment message here. But my favorite line, I just like over and over, I'm like, I want this on a t-shirt. It says, "An overnight success just for banging on their chest as we cheer beneath the glass ceiling." And I was like, oh, bravo, ladies. Like, how
That's
long
it.
have we had to sit back and do that? And it makes me feel like no more, right? Like everybody's saying, like, no more. That's
That's
basic.
it.
And we're not going to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's that I got to say, that lyric you as well. That was the one which first made me sort of listen and think like, oh, this is nice. But then, kind of started actually listening to the music and the lyrics and everything. Because like all the way
So
through the
good.
songs, there's so much I think that they have to say, and it's said really succinctly. I love those lyricists who basically make these slogans. It's
Yeah.
like these lyrics which are just so compact in like the meaningful sort of message that it gets out, that every line you just kind of like feel, damn, if I was a teenager, I'd be putting that in my pencil case. That's something
Yes.
else. Yeah.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And it's when those lines catch you that I feel like I'm immediately hooked to a band almost, right? Like if they can catch me with a lyric, or I love the way you phrased it as a slogan, then I'm in. I'm hooked for life usually. I just think that's such a as a person that writes, like I just think it's such a skill, right? To be able
Yeah.
to turn a phrase like that in a way that resonates with so many people, and the ability to kind of again transcend countries or languages or whatever, and still
Yeah.
make the exact same point. And again, having them deliver it with such confidence and conviction just makes it all the more empowering and real for me.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, I think, even all of what we've talked about is enough to kind of make me want to sit up and take notice. But what's like something we haven't even mentioned yet is I actually think the music is great too. Like it
Yes.
just wouldn't work if these songs were just like, okay, well, I like the lyrics, but the music, it's meh. It's like each of these songs, I'm just like, my God, I'm so excited for that debut album. I really want to hear the whole thing because every time
Yes.
one of them drops, and like this one, I think is probably my favorite, it's always that moment of just like, okay, it's so simple, it's so like straightforward, but it's just there's just always some sort of hook to them, which just kind of like makes you think, okay, that's not where I expected this to go. That's cool.
Same. It's fun to be surprised in a song like this. I think
Yeah,
I think it gives it another level, right? Because you're like, oh, it's not just, these ladies screaming about being mad. You hear that a lot. It's
right,
like
right.
they're really like they're bringing it. It's like you said. I'm glad you mentioned that because yes, they are all like strong. The music is strong. They're all like going hard the entire song. It's
Yeah.
definitely not like it's a great song and a great band. I was so happy to have a Lambrini Girls song on the show. So thank you for bringing that.
No
Um,
problem.
and clearly that song influenced one of my picks here today. So we'll transition into my first pick, which is an old song that I still love and has been on repeat with Lambrini Girls all week. I can't stop listening. I think my husband and daughter are starting to get a little worried about the loud music they hear coming from my office. But my first pick is a song called Shitlist by L7. So I'm going to just like keep us in this lane for a minute, and I hate that like these are deemed like angry female songs or whatever because I'm like, you know what? It's okay for us to get mad. Dudes get mad all the time, every day, lots.
Yeah,
And they sing
yeah,
about it. And you know what?
yeah.
So do women. And so it sometimes feels really disheartening that like women immediately get labeled as like angry for having this song and like man hating and all of these things. And it's none of that. It's none of that. It's that we get mad
Absolutely.
too and we need to express it just like anybody else. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to know, was this a song that you knew? Were you familiar with L7? Did you know this
Yeah,
song?
I mean, I'm very familiar with L7, but I have to admit this album I definitely didn't listen to as much. And I thought it was nice because you
Hmm.
picked one that wasn't like the biggest song. And they are a band I respect a lot. I like a lot. The whole Riot Girl movement is just one
Yeah.
which I like a lot of the musicians from. And yeah, leading on from the Lambrini Girls song, I was like, yeah, this is like a perfect like pairing of Evolution here. But also your point as well. It's like that, when they came out, it was around the time when Nirvana were breaking and things like that.
Yep.
And I always kind of felt like, it was, they were they were such great songs, such a great message, such a great live band. I always felt like L7 should also have been on that next level of popularity, like
Mhm.
you always wonder, it's like, why is it that, they didn't sort of break out to that sort of being a household name, because the music they made was just as catchy, just as kind of that perfect personification of like this kind of like grunge post kind of 80s hair rock sort of mentality. Throw that shit away, we need to like
Yeah.
make some good music. But like, yeah, it's I love listening to L7, and I didn't get a chance to see them on their recent reunion shows, but I really do wish I had I'd got to see it.
So good. And they still, again, this was one of the first bands where kind of like we talked about those lyrics as slogans, they really
Yeah,
delivered for me on that. Like they did a great job always of putting together a phrase that you're like, "Yes, I've been wanting to say that for so long and didn't know how," and you just did it.
yeah,
And then I think too, like they paved the way not only for bands, like Lambrini Girls, but the first time, I have to be honest, the first time I heard Look What You Made Me Do by Taylor Swift from that whole Reputation album, I'm like, this song wouldn't have happened without a song like Shitlist, right? Like and she
yeah,
she doesn't call it Shitlist, but the whole like, I've got a list, I check it twice, yours is in red underlined, like I'm like
yeah.
there has to be some sort of like correlation there. And so I always love to go back and say like some of these artists that didn't get as huge as I think they deserve to be, like still give them credit for kind of paving the way for some of these other artists that did, because I really don't know that a song like Look What You Made Me Do, would have happened without a song like
Yeah.
Shitlist. At least in my musical heart, I want to believe that.
No, I know what you mean. And it's also easy to forget, like, that, this song came out in the 90s and things are very different now to how they were back then. So whilst some of L7's music now might kind of just sound like, oh yeah, I kind of, get where they're coming from, get what this is, you like it or you don't. But like, this is in an environment where people are still getting over Guns N' Roses being the biggest band in the world.
Right.
It's a very different world than we're in now, and people sincerely liking it, not sort of just, putting on bandanas and pretending it's like this cosplay or something,
Right,
it's a very different atmosphere.
Yeah, it's so true. And I've always, like, I've loved this song. I've loved this band for forever. And for me too, they were popular when I was living in Los Angeles. And so it did. And they do, like you said, get lumped into kind of that Seattle scene a lot, even though they are an LA band. And so I also have some fondness there for, my California days.
I can imagine.
We're going to round out the playlist with a favorite. I'm waiting to get all kinds of feedback from listeners. Like, please stop bombarding us with Wetleg, but I can't and I won't. I love Wetleg and I will never stop loving Wetleg. So just like go for the ride with me, listeners, because they're going to always appear every chance they can. So to round out our playlist today, my second pick is a song called C'est Comme Ça by Paramore and Wetleg. So this is a new single that came out pretty recently. And again, I've listened to like everything Wetleg has put out 1,000 times. And so I'm like, please, I need a new album so badly because I love this band. Like, I cannot stop listening to them. And it was interesting when I saw this, I almost didn't want to listen to this song because despite the popularity of Paramore, I know people love them. I know they love Hayley Williams. I think her voice is beautiful. I was never a fan of that band because I can only associate them with that Wake Me Up song, that I like cannot hear ever again or ever take seriously. I remember even the first time I heard that song, I was like, is this for real? Like, this song sounds like a joke. What's happening here? And so,
isn't that Evanescence, that song?
Oh yeah, you're right. That is Evanescence. Okay, there we go. You're right. That's Evanescence. I was like, that is not Paramore. That was almost like a Nickelback mistake, right? Where like there was another episode where somebody called out a lyric and was like, was that Nickelback? And we were like, no, don't even say Nickelback on the show. You're totally right, though. That was Evanescence. I always get those bands mixed up, always. Okay. I never listened to Paramore because I think they're Evanescence. Like, that's why. I just never go there. But I think this song is so much like, it was funny because I thought it was just a Wetleg song until I started digging a little bit more into it. I'm like, oh, Paramore's in here. Like, I just thought it sounded so much like every other way, with the strong bass line and the drums and like everything else by Wetleg, that I didn't even realize it was a collaboration until I went back and started digging and looking at who it was. I just assumed, oh, it's a new Wetleg track. That's it. So tell me what your thoughts are here about Wetleg, about this song. Paramore, was it one that you knew? Right. Well, thank you. Thank God you're on the show today because I would have.
Yeah, no, it's funny though when you say that because I actually for the longest time didn't listen to Paramore because I for some reason had it in my head that they were a band that I wasn't going to like, and then actually years later listened to them, long after they were at the peak popularity, and then suddenly was like, oh damn, this is actually right up my alley. There are lots of songs.
They're good. So they're good.
Yeah, they're good. Okay. Yeah, that's I felt like I don't know where I got it from in my head that I was just like, oh no, it's too poppy or something like this. But no, it's good stuff. And I didn't. But I mean, like they're not like my favorite band in the world. It's not. But I do like listening to some of it, and it was quite cool to hear that they had like a new album last year. But I wasn't aware of this remix album or this remix and covers album. And I have to admit, you're suggesting this song was my first time listening to this. And then after a while of listening to this, really liking it, I do like Wetleg a lot as well. And I really like their vibe. And another band who just turned such simplicity into just being so effortlessly great. So I do love the things that they do. And I feel bad because then I listened to the original that this is the cover from, and I was like, oh, this is nowhere near as good. So I was, and I was like, am I biased just because I've heard the cover first? But I was just like, you've basically taken this song, which is okay. I wouldn't say it's one of the better ones here, and I turned it into an obvious single, a really great track. And the changes are, they're slight. And like you said, they've basically just taken it and put it through the Wetleg machine, and it's come out just so much like cooler, smoother. It's just like the vibe to it, you just like before the vocals even kick in, you're just like, yeah, I want to hear more of this.
Yeah, I agree. And this is Wetleg's another band that I think their lyrics always deliver. And again, just like I love the bass and the drums that always accompany a Wetleg tune. And not drum and bass in like the electronic music sense, but like the literal sense.
No, the production and everything on that. Yeah, that is it, because it's just there's not much instrumentation to Wetleg, but what they do use is just so important, and then it just sounds so good. And also like having a song called like Comme, you're just like, oh, of course that's a Wetleg song. I didn't even think that it could be a cover at first, because I'm like, that is so what they would call a song as well. So don't even question it.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad that I had you here today to set me straight about Evanescence and Paramore, because that would have been crazy. And I promise listeners, before I get all of like the hate emails about Paramore and confusing them, I'm going to go and listen as soon as we finish recording today. I'm going to go listen to Paramore and I will report back. Maybe next week we'll have a Paramore song, right?
One without the cover.
Well, you're right. One that's just them. That's not a repeat. Imagine
it was a Paramore's cover of an Evanescence song. That would be a whole...
That's what we're going to get next, right? You heard it here first.
Actually, I just hope that doesn't exist.
Well, and I can guarantee there will never be an Evanescence song that I bring to the show. So
that's good to hear. Good to hear.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for sharing what you're listening to this week. I loved getting to know you. Yeah, this was fun. And listeners, really good. To learn more about Stephen and watch episodes of Real Power Talk, you can visit the Facebook page for Real Power Talk. That's on facebook.com/Real Power Talk, RealPowerTalk. And as always, please be sure to follow, download, and share this show. And if you love listening, please drop us a review on Apple or Spotify. Last but not least, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix and What Are You Listening To, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.